Welcome back to the deep dive. So, if you were with us last time, you'll know exactly where we left Oliver's narrator. Basically, standing right on that cliff edge of emotional commitment.
Yeah.
We just finished track 10, You're My Home, which felt like this huge narrative climax, you know?
Yeah.
Raider finally choosing stability.
And what a choice it was. That track was just so weighty, wasn't it?
Mm.
Lyrically, musically, it felt like this incredibly high stakes victory he'd barely won over all his own chaos,
Hmm.
confronting the lying, the self-sabotage, everything. And he lands on that line, chains on my soul so it won't run away.
Uh,
That's
yeah.
heavy stuff.
It really is. And the music, that 68 rock ballad feel, it just sounded like effort. Like this determined, maybe even exhausting trudge towards something permanent, something real, not transactional.
Exactly. Stability, but at a massive psychological cost. You felt the weight of that choice.
And we, listening along, we probably sat back thinking, okay, phew, he's done it. He's found his anchor. But, well, album narratives, they rarely let you rest easy, do they?
Not this one, certainly.
Because, like, with no warning at all, not even a moment to sort of breathe in that commitment he just made, bang, we're thrown straight into track 11, How to Buy Love.
Oh, the shift is genuinely jarring.
Yeah.
It really is. You go instantly from this solemn promise of earned, committed love to this incredibly cynical, almost cold transactional question.
Yeah.
The whole foundation just flips. I mean, he just finished. Proving love requires everything but money, and suddenly the narrative confronts him with, well, can you actually just buy affection?
It's a massive conceptual U-turn, and it's underlined by an equally radical shift in genre, isn't it?
Absolutely. Gone is that heavy, driving rock ballad
It's
sound.
we
And we're plunged right into this light, almost buoyant, syncopated feel. It's reggae.
reggae. It's like immediate, almost unsettling, really, given Oliver's usual, guitar-heavy rock and blues world.
And that tension is fascinating, isn't it? The
Yeah.
contrast, the subject matter,
Mm.
this cold question about monetizing human connection that's heavy, philosophically heavy.
Mm-hmm.
But the music itself, it's light, it's lifted, it almost makes you float a bit,
Mm-hmm.
which forces us to ask, why?
Yeah.
Why use this seemingly carefree sound of reggae to tackle one of society's more cynical tendencies?
Right. And that's really our mission for this deep dive, isn't it? We need to unpack this narrative and musical whiplash. Is the narrator somehow immediately backtracking, giving up on that commitment and falling back into old skepticism?
Or is there something else going on? Is this buoyant, maybe even ironic reggae style actually a deliberate strategy? A way to deal with that pervasive societal fear that everything has a price tag. But to do it with, I don't know, distance? Maybe even a bit of humor, a renewed kind of clarity.
Exactly. We've got to understand not just what he's saying, but how the music itself is shaping that message.
So let's start with that musical transition, because honestly, it's the first thing that hits you, right? Track 10, You're My Home, was rooted deep in that powerful, driving 68-time signature.
Yeah, that pulse.
If you think about it musically, 68 often feels like a march, or maybe a slow, heavy waltz sometimes. It's got this inherent feeling of determination, of like immense effort. It really sounded like a man putting chains on his soul.
It did. It felt physically grounding, like
Yeah.
it was asserting permanence through just sheer sonic weight. The bass lines felt heavy, the drums were pushing forward. That momentum felt really directed, almost intense sometimes.
Mhm.
Listening to it was almost exhausting, actually, which perfectly mirrored the effort of the commitment itself, I thought.
Absolutely perfectly. Then, bam, track 11 starts, and everything changes. We shift to a standard 44 time, okay, but it's infused with that unmistakable reggae syncopation. Specifically, you hear that one-drop rhythm in there.
Right, that characteristic lift.
Instead of the heavy beats 1 and 3 getting all the emphasis, the groove pushes towards the offbeats. It gives you that feeling of lift, that forward lean, almost like you're floating or bobbing along. And the guitar often has that sharp, percussive skank sound played on the upbeats.
Okay, so unpack that for us. Why does that sonic detail, that rhythmic feel, matter so much to the listener here?
Because the feeling of the music is actively distancing you from the heavy emotional lifting of the previous track,
Mm.
and even the subject matter itself. That 68 rock ballad was serious. It demanded gravity.
Yeah, you felt it.
But the reggae bounce, it's cyclical, it's more relaxed, and inherently less urgent. It functions almost like musical irony here. The narrator's talking about a really profound societal issue, the commodification of love, but he's doing it with a sound that kind of says, yeah, this is a problem, but it's not actually going to crush me.
Ah, okay.
It's like a philosophical critique delivered with a bit of a shrug, maybe.
So the reggae choice isn't just about providing a bit of lightness, like a break. It's actually much more sophisticated. It's almost like a defense mechanism.
I think so. A mechanism for survival, maybe,
Hmm.
after facing the abyss of his own self-destruction in track 10, trying to confront the world's cynicism through another heavy rock song might have just dragged him right back down.
Right, it could have been too much.
But with reggae, he can maintain this critical distance. He can observe the problem without being swallowed by it.
And that distance lets him hold onto the ground he just won, philosophically speaking. Because remember, track 10, he accepted his home was his partner, grounded in her presence amidst all the chaos. The cost was his personal effort, his commitment, nothing monetary.
Exactly. And track 11 immediately tries to destabilize that certainty by bringing in all these concepts of currency and shopping and cost. It's like the world is immediately testing his newfound resolve.
It's like the world sees this priceless thing he just fought tooth and nail for, and the first reaction is, okay, cool, how much?
Pretty much. And it's really important to remember, as the source material points out, this song actually started life way back in 1995. It was initially conceived as, quote, kind of a joke song.
Ah, okay, that's fascinating context.
It is, because it supports this idea that maybe the track is serving partly as a moment of necessary narrative levity.
Hmm.
A palate cleanser, you could say, sandwiched between these two really intense rock ballads, track 10 before it, and what we know is coming after it.
Right.
Oliver maybe needed to break that emotional tension,
Yeah.
and he uses the sort of inherent playfulness and that cyclical feel of reggae to do it.
Hmm.
He's still delivering a serious cultural critique, absolutely, but he's doing it through a lens that stops him and maybe stops us from taking it too heavily, too seriously.
The buoyancy lets the narrator stand outside the transactional question, critique it, rather than getting consumed by it again. He's shifting focus from his own internal chaos to critiquing this external societal chaos.
So the conceptual challenge really is this. Track 9 gave us unquestionable love, track 10 cemented home.
Mm-hmm.
But this track suggests that even after you achieve that kind of profound, absolute certainty, the external world keeps pushing back. Through media, through friends, through consumer culture, it relentlessly pushes this message that relationships should be simple, easy, maybe even transactional. And the narrator uses this reggae critique to push back against that, to assert his new, hard-won belief against that constant pressure of easy cynicism.
And by making it sound like this almost humorous, bouncing little anthem, he kind of strips the cynicism of its power. He's not wallowing in the fear that everything's transactional. He's almost laughing at the absurdity of it.
Exactly. He's found a way to engage with it without letting it defeat him. So the song immediately externalizes the problem, doesn't it? This isn't the narrator wrestling with his own doubts this time. No, it's a desperate phone call. An old friend wakes him up,
Yeah.
and the friend just cuts right to it. No pleasantries, just how much love costs.
That detail, woken up by an old friend, that's such a nice bit of character work, isn't it? It suggests this problem is interrupting his newfound peace. Maybe it's a problem from his past life, the life where he was lying and drinking and always looking for external fixes.
Oh, that's a really powerful reading.
Like the friend represents that old, confused self still knocking on the door of the new, committed self he's trying to be.
I like that a lot. The friend isn't just a plot device here. He really embodies that generalized societal confusion Oliver seems to be critiquing. He's clearly anxious, maybe desperate, demanding a number, a quantity, for something that's fundamentally unquantifiable.
And the narrator's reaction, it's
Yeah.
instant. And it's incredibly harsh, actually. He tells the friend flat out, he's a fool if he can ask this, and then says buying love with money is the stupid thing.
Oh, whoa. Yeah, it's strong language.
Okay, hang on. Let's pause there. This is the same guy who literally one track ago admitted he had to chain his own soul down to stop it running away. He was deeply flawed, totally unstable just moments before, and now he's calling his friend a fool for looking for an easy answer. I mean, isn't that profoundly hypocritical?
It absolutely raises that question, doesn't it? And I think that's where the psychological core of this track really lies. You've nailed the key tension. The narrator has just survived this crucible of an emotional journey through the album betrayal, self-loathing, all the hard work needed to earn real commitment.
Right.
So from that perspective, he sees his friend wanting this monetary shortcut, this easy answer, as just profoundly ignorant of what love actually costs, emotionally speaking.
Okay, so maybe his harshness isn't about feeling morally superior now. It's more about the gap between painful lived experience, which he now has, versus just like intellectual speculation, which is where the friend is stuck.
I think that's a very good way to put it. The
Yeah.
narrator knows the transaction only looks simple if you haven't paid the real price, and he just paid it dearly. And maybe, in a way, the narrator is projecting, but perhaps not hypocrisy in the way we first think. Maybe he's projecting the shame of his past self onto his friend. He knows seeking a financial solution is the easy way out, the self-deceptive path, because he spent most of the album trying to avoid the hard emotional work himself.
Ah, okay.
So by calling the friend a fool, he's drawing a really sharp line. He's distancing himself from his own previous failures. He's saying, that's not me anymore. I know better now. He's staking a claim on his hard-won wisdom.
So that line, stupid thing, it becomes like a boundary marker. He's defining himself against that old way of thinking.
I think so. And the dialogue continues, right? The friend tries to justify this desperate question by saying, well, no one knows the answer, which just highlights how widespread this confusion is, this cultural idea that maybe love can be bought or quantified, especially in a world full of quick fixes and, consumer metaphors for everything.
Yeah.
But what really nails Oliver's critique of society, and particularly the media, is where the friend went looking for these answers.
Right. The list is just so telling, isn't it? He called CNN and MTV, and he searched on the internet. This is such a perfect snapshot of like the early to mid 90s desperation for answers, right? Looking in mass media, pop culture, and this still relatively new thing, the digital world.
Yeah, it's a pretty devastating critique when you stop and think about it. The friend is trying to solve this deep, human, emotional void using the most superficial, commercial, attention-grabbing sources available.
Yeah.
He's looking for profound truth about commitment in the same places he gets, I don't know, news headlines and music videos. Oliver's basically saying these sources are inherently incapable of providing real meaning. They give you information, maybe entertainment,
Yeah.
but not wisdom.
And we saw the narrator himself doing something similar earlier in the album, didn't we? Remember him waiting for a telegram or pleading, tell me why, always looking for some sign, some answer to come from outside himself?
Exactly. The friend is caught in that exact same external trap.
Yeah.
But the narrator, having been through the fire, now has just enough clarity to see how futile it is, which leads to that moment of just genuine exasperation from the narrator. Oh my God, is he just a blind to see? The implication is crystal clear. The truth is actually simple. It's internal. But the friend is making it complicated by looking outside, looking for that easy price tag.
And using that buoyant reggae backdrop for this, it makes the whole quest calling MTV about the cost of love seem almost ridiculous. The music itself underlines the idea that the friend's search is kind of laughable, even while acknowledging that his underlying pain is probably very real.
Yeah, the lightness of the music judges the absurdity of the method. Okay, so section 2, set up the problem, this friend's foolish quest. And now the narrator uses that external dialogue, that phone call, to articulate what really feels like the central philosophical statement earned through the entire album's journey. This is it. This is the distilled wisdom. If there's something that I've learned from my life, only love buys love.
Boom. That line just lands, doesn't it? It feels like the ultimate declaration of independence from all that transactional thinking we've been talking about. It establishes love itself, not money, not anything else, as the only legitimate currency in a relationship.
Yes. It moves way beyond just saying, the cliche, money can't buy happiness. It actually defines the specific, necessary currency that is required. Emotional investment. Love buys love.
And listening to that line, it makes you think back, doesn't it? It retrospectively validates every painful thing the narrator went through earlier. He was crying in the vein. His soul was burning with pain. Those were the payments. That vulnerability, that effort, that was the true cost.
Precisely. The currency isn't negotiable. It isn't based on fluctuating market values. It's a constant, purely emotional exchange. And making that investment is what allowed him eventually to find unquestionable love back in track 9 and then the stability of home in track 10.
So this line then sets up the really strong anti-consumerist message that kind of defines this whole track, right? Because he immediately follows up that big philosophical statement with a very direct, very specific instruction.
Yeah, he says, you can't just take your visa and go shopping.
That imagery is just so potent, especially thinking about the mid-90s context when the song was being refined. That idea of the visa and shopping, it's a direct hit against that culture of convenience, of instant gratification that was really ramping up with easy credit and, the beginnings of online everything.
Absolutely. By using the word visa specifically, he's almost targeting the concept of emotional debt, of trying to get love on credit, expecting to pay later.
Right.
And Oliver's saying, nope. Love cannot be acquired on credit. It demands immediate, active, sometimes painful, always honest investment right now.
It's a critique of how consumer culture teaches us that needs can be met instantly. If you need a TV, you go shop for it. If you feel lonely, the friend assumes he can somehow shop for affection too, maybe by buying gifts or status or experiences, thinking those transactions will add up to emotional fulfillment.
Exactly. And Oliver's just flat out rejecting the idea that relationships can be simplified down to ticking off items on a shopping list, whether it's material goods or favors done. It contrasts so sharply with the waiting and the heavy trudging we heard about in earlier tracks, where progress was slow, agonizing. Love, Oliver's saying here, demands investment in time, vulnerability, effort, not just a swipe of plastic.
And thinking about the reggae backing again in this specific context, does that add another layer? Because reggae often has roots in, music of the people, sometimes resistance against oppressive systems, including financial ones.
That's a really interesting point. Using that genre to critique the universal commodification of love, which affects everyone, regardless of their bank balance, it does give the message this sort of defiant, maybe even subtly political, universal resonance.
Yeah, like it elevates the critique from just his personal revelation to a broader social commentary. He's speaking truth to power, maybe, where the power is just the sheer convenience of transactional thinking.
Well put. Now let's talk about that final bit of advice the narrator gives his friend because it often trips people up. And you better take it for granted.
Yeah, that line sounds weird, doesn't it? On the surface, it sounds dismissive, ungrateful even. If you just fought so hard to understand love's value, why would you immediately tell someone to take it for granted?
Right. It seems counterintuitive.
Yeah.
And I think there are probably two main ways to read it, and maybe they both work at the same time. The first is that superficial reading you mentioned. It's dismissive. Maybe it shows the narrator still a bit cynical underneath it all. But that feels like it clashes with the hard-won wisdom he just articulated and everything from track 10.
Okay, so what's the other reading, the one that aligns both?
The second interpretation, which I think fits the narrator's newfound clarity much better, is that he means the truth itself, the core principle, that only love buys love. That is what should be taken for granted.
Ah, okay. So it should be accepted as just a fundamental, obvious fact of life, like gravity.
Exactly. It should be a given, a foundational principle of how relationships work, not some complex equation you need to call CNN or search the internet to figure out.
Right.
The friend's whole struggle, his whole desperate search, comes from his failure to just accept this basic emotional truth. That failure forces him into looking for a financial substitute, a price tag. So the narrator's saying, stop searching for the cost of the transaction and just internalize the value of the exchange. Accept that this truth is fundamental, take it for granted.
So take it for granted here means something more like accept this as the unshakable premise. If you just accept that love is the only currency, then the frantic searching stops, the anxiety might ease up, and the real work, the emotional investment, can actually begin.
Precisely. And that acceptance, it links directly back to the emotional stability the narrator supposedly achieved in You're My Home. Remember, he accepted the chaos outside, but asserted his internal certainty. He's basically telling his friend to find that same internal certainty about love's value and stop looking for validation or price tags from external transactional systems.
It's actually a pretty profound piece of coaching, isn't it? Even if the delivery, calling him a fool, is still pretty harsh. He's trying to pass on the wisdom that cost him so dearly.
Yeah, the wisdom that cost him his spiritual chains, as he put it. Hashtag tag tag 4, the friend's emotional state, and the repetitive outro. But, despite that harsh judgment calling his friend a fool, the narrator doesn't stay entirely cold about it. He does seem to acknowledge the deep emotional pain that this whole transactional search is causing his friend.
Yeah, there's that shift, isn't there?
He observes, you've been walking through the shadows. You've been crying much too long.
And that immediately humanizes the friend again, doesn't it? He stops being just this abstract symbol of societal confusion and becomes someone recognizable, someone exhausted, lonely.
The lyrics say the friend is tired and desperately needs someone tonight to help you go on.
Wow, that language. That resonates so strongly with the narrator's own past self, doesn't it?
It's the critical connection point, I think. That phrasing echoes the exact same themes of profound loneliness, exhaustion, and just desperate need that plagued the narrator himself earlier in the album. Think back to the sheer desolation in 3 Million Miles, feeling totally adrift, west of nothing, east of nothing.
Yeah.
Or that raw desperation in Tell Me Why, where he literally needed answers just to make me live again. The friend is clearly suffering from that same kind of internal void, that same existential fatigue.
The crucial difference being, the friend is misdiagnosing the cure. He's trying to solve this deep emotional crisis of loneliness and exhaustion with an economic solution. He's still looking for the price tag.
Exactly. And that failure to internalize the emotional solution, even after being told it, is precisely what drives the final, really powerful section of the song, that repetitive outro.
Yeah. The song just closes with this constant, almost frantic repetition of the question, how to buy love. The source material says it's repeated, what, 12 times?
12 times. Think about that. Despite the narrator giving him the clear, definitive, hard-won answer, only love buys love, the music, the lyrics, they just revert straight back to the confused, desperate starting point, that repetitive loop. It's a brilliant sonic metaphor for being stuck, for stasis.
Mm-hmm.
It perfectly demonstrates how incredibly difficult it can be, maybe almost impossible sometimes, to move from just knowing something intellectually to actually applying it emotionally, practically in your life.
The friend heard the answer. He probably even understood it on some level. But his anxiety, maybe his conditioning by consumer culture, it just locks him into asking the wrong question over and over and over again. It's like this mental loop he can't break out of.
Yeah, like a neurological rut dug by transactional thinking, preventing him from accessing the simple truth right in front of him.
It makes the ending quite heartbreaking, actually.
It really is, because the narrator just offered the key, the liberation formula. But that human tendency towards fear, maybe towards seeking easy answers even when we know better, perhaps especially financial ones, it proves stronger, at least for the friend. It traps him, and by extension maybe traps society, in this endless loop of trying to commodify the uncommodifiable. It ends on this note of profound resignation, almost. The narrator found the path out, but he seems to know just how easy it is to stay lost in the shadows, asking the wrong question. Hashtag tag tag outro.
Okay, so How to Buy Love ultimately serves as this really powerful, surprisingly buoyant philosophical pause point in the album. It uses the unexpected sound of reggae to deliver this sharp critique of how society tries to put a price tag on emotion. And through it all, Oliver asserts his narrator's ultimate hard-won piece of wisdom. Love is the only real currency, and it's earned through emotional labor, not through Visa cards.
It's a clear message.
Hmm.
But what remains a fascinating tension, and maybe something for you listening to really mull over, is the psychological space the narrator himself occupies after delivering this definitive verdict.
Mm-hmm.
He judges his friend so harshly, calls him a fool for looking for easy financial answers. But we cannot forget that this is the same narrator who, just one track earlier, confessed to lying, drinking, being totally unstable, needing to put literal chains on my soul to stop himself from self-destructing.
Right. That confession is still hanging in the air.
So given the narrator's own very recent, very intense internal chaos, is it possible that the friend's confusion about love's cost is actually just a realistic reflection of the same underlying instability that the narrator himself has only just barely managed to contain?
That's a really provocative thought.
I think it raises the question, was it maybe easier for the narrator to solve the problem, for an external foolish friend, by giving him this neat, simple philosophical statement, only love buys love, than it is for him to actually manage his own persistent, ongoing internal chaos? The chaos he literally just confessed to in You're My Home.
Wow.
Critiquing the transaction from a distance. Intellectually, that's relatively easy, but the ongoing day in, day out emotional labor required for real stability, that's the brutally hard part he might still be grappling with.
That is a perfect psychological cliffhanger to end this reggae interlude on. And now the album shifts yet again, immediately moving on from this buoyant critique.
Yeah, next up we hit track 12, For Another Day, and look at the genre listed. A rock blues ballad. We are immediately snapping back to the heavy emotional weight we left behind after track 10.
Back to the weight.
So the question for our next deep dive becomes absolutely pivotal. After reaching this point of commitment in You're My Home, and then asserting love's priceless, immediate nature right here in How to Buy Love, why does the narrator immediately pivot to a title that suggests delay, procrastination, putting something off for another day?
Are we returning to the heavy emotional trudge of a rock blues ballad to explore some kind of new stalling tactic? Has he maybe postponed the actual work of stability despite his newfound philosophical certainty?
That's exactly what we need to dig into next time.
We will be right here to do that.
Until then, keep digging.